Autobiography of George Muller, Chapter 3, Part 3. 1831. Tempted to Unbelief. On January 6th, 7th, and 8th, 1831, I had repeatedly asked the Lord for money, but received none. On the evening of January 8th, I left my room for a few minutes and was then tempted to distrust the Lord, though He had been so gracious to us in that He not only up to that day had supplied all our wants, but had given us also those answers to prayer, which have been in part just mentioned. I was so sinful for about 5 minutes as to think it would be of no use to trust in the Lord in this way. I also began to say to myself that I had perhaps gone too far in living in this way. But thanks to the Lord, this trial lasted but a few minutes. He enabled me again to trust in Him, and Satan was immediately confounded. For when I returned to my room, out of which I had not been absent 10 minutes, the Lord sent deliverancy. For a sister in the Lord who resided at Exeter had come to Teignmouth and brought us £2 4 shillings. January 10th. Today, when we had again but a few shillings, £5 was given to us, which had been taken out of the box. I had once for all told a brother, who had the care of these temporal things, to have the kindness to let me have the money every week. But as these beloved brethren either forgot to take it out weekly, or were ashamed to bring it in such small amounts, it was generally taken out every 3, 4, or 5 weeks. As I had stated to them, however, that from the commencement that I desired to look neither to man nor the box, but to the living God, I thought it not right on my part to remind them of my request to have the money weekly, lest it should hinder the testimony which I wished to give of trusting in the living God alone. It was on this account that on January 28th, when we had again but little money, though I had seen a brother on January 24th open the box and take out the money, I would not ask the brother in whose hands it was to let me have it. But I asked the Lord to incline his heart to bring it, and but a little time afterwards it was given to us, even £1 8 shillings 6 dimes. On March 7th I was again tempted to disbelieve the faithfulness of the Lord, and though I was not miserable, still I was not so fully resting upon the Lord that I could triumph with joy. It was but 1 hour after, when the Lord gave me another proof of His faithful love. There came from some sisters in the Lord £5, and with these words written on the paper, I was a-hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. Lord, when saw we thee a-hungered, and fed thee, or thirsty, and gave thee drink? And the Lord shall answer, and say unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. About April 20th, I went to Falmouth. Here and in the neighborhood I preached repeatedly, and from thence I went to Barnstaple. While we were at Barnstaple, there was found in my wife's bag a sovereign put there anonymously. A sister also gave us £2. On our return to Teignmouth, May 2nd, when we emptied our traveling bag, there fell out a paper with money. It contained 2 sovereigns and 3 pence. The latter put in, no doubt, to make a noise in emptying the bag. May the Lord bless and reward the giver. In a similar way, we found 4 shillings put anonymously into one of our drawers a few days after. June 12th, Lord's Day. On Thursday last, I went with Brother Craig to Torquay to preach there. I had only about 3 shillings with me and left my wife with about 6 shillings at home. The Lord provided beds for us through the hospitality of our brother. I asked the Lord repeatedly for money, but when I came home, my wife had only about 3 shillings left, having received nothing. We waited still upon the Lord. Yesterday passed away, and no money came. We had 9 dimes left. This morning we were still waiting upon the Lord and looking for deliverancy. We had only a little butter left for breakfast, sufficient for Brother E. and a relative living with us, to whom we did not mention our circumstances, that they might not be made uncomfortable. After the morning meeting, Brother Y. most unexpectedly opened the box, and in giving me quite unexpectedly the money at such a time, he told me that he and his wife could not sleep last night on account of thinking that we might want money. The most striking point is that after I had repeatedly asked the Lord, but received nothing, I then prayed yesterday that the Lord would be pleased to impress upon Brother Y. that we wanted money so that he might open the box. There was in it £1 8 sterlings 10 1/2 dime. Our joy on account of this fresh delivery was great, and we praised the Lord heartily. July 20th. A shoulder of mutton and a loaf were sent to us anonymously. I understood some time afterwards that Satan had raised the false report that we were starving, in consequence of which a believer sent these portions. I would mention, by the way, that various reports have been circulated on account of our way of living. Sometimes it has been said that we had not enough to eat, and that surely such and such an infirmity of body we had brought on us, because we had not the necessities of life. Now, the truth is that while we have been often brought low, yea, so low that we have not had even as much as one single penny left, or so as to have the last loaf on the table, and not so much as was needed to buy another loaf. Yet never have we had to sit down to a meal without our good Lord having provided nourishing food for us. I am bound to state this, and I do it with pleasure. My master has been a kind master to me, and if I had to choose this day again, as to the way of living, the Lord giving me grace, I would not choose differently. But even these very reports, false as they were, I doubt not the Lord had sometimes used as a means to put it into the hearts of His children to remember our temporal necessities. About July 25th, I preached several times at Columpton and in a neighboring village in the open air. My experience as regards preaching in the open air has been very different from what I might have expected. I have often preached out of doors, but once had it been blessed, so far as I know, and that was in the case of an officer of the army who came to make sport of it. Whilst almost in every place, if not in every place, where I have preached in rooms or chapels, the Lord has given testimony to the word. Perhaps the Lord has not been pleased to let me see fruit from this part of my work, though I have been many times engaged in it. Or it may be that because I did not pray so earnestly respecting my outdoor preaching as respecting my indoor preaching, the former has not been so much blessed as the latter. But this testimony I cannot but bear, that though I do not consider it at present my work, on account of want of bodily strength, yet it is a most important work, and I should delight in being so honored now as to be allowed to engage in it. November 19th. We had not enough to pay our weekly rent, but the Lord graciously sent us again today 14 shillings 6 dimes. I would just observe that we never contract debts, while we believe to be unscriptural, according to Romans 13:8. And therefore we have no bills with our tailor, shoemaker, grocer, butcher, baker, etc. But all we buy we pay for in ready money. The Lord helping us, we would rather suffer privation than contract debts. Thus, we always know how much we have and how much we have a right to give away. May I entreat the believing reader prayerfully to consider this matter, for I am well aware that many trials come upon the children of God on account of not acting according to Romans 13:8. November 27th, Lord's Day. Our money had been reduced to 2.5 dimes. Our bread was hardly enough for this day. I had several times brought our need before the Lord. After dinner, when I returned thanks, I asked Him to give us our daily bread, meaning literally that He would send us bread for the evening. While I was praying, there was a knock on the door of the room. After I had concluded, a poor sister came in and brought us some of her dinner, and from another poor sister 5 shillings. In the afternoon, she also brought us a large loaf. Thus the Lord not only literally gave us bread, but also money. In reading about all these answers to prayers, the believing reader may be led to think that I am spiritually minded above most of the children of God, and that therefore the Lord favors us thus. The true reason is this: just in as many points as we are acting according to the mind of God, in so many are we blessed and making a blessing. Our manner of living is according to the mind of the Lord, for He delights in seeing His children thus come to Him. Matthew 6. And therefore, though I am weak and erring in many points, yet He blesses me in this particular, and I doubt not will bless me, as long as He shall enable me to act according to His will in this matter. After we had, on December 31st, 1831, looked over the Lord's gracious dealings with us during the past year, in providing for our temporal wants, we had about 10 shillings left. A little while after, the providence of God called for that, so that not one farthing remained. Thus we closed the old year, in which the Lord had been so gracious in giving to us, without our asking anyone, altogether, £131, 18 shillings 8 dimes. There had been Likewise, many articles of provision and some articles of clothing given to us worth at least 20 pounds. I am so particular mentioning these things to show that we are never losers by acting according to the mind of the Lord. For had I had my regular salary, humanly speaking, I should not have had nearly as much. But whether this would have been the case or not, this is plain, that I have not served a hard master, and that is what I delight to show. For to speak well of his name, that thus my beloved fellow pilgrims, who may read this, may be encouraged to trust in him, is the chief purpose of my writing. 1832, January 7th. We had been again repeatedly asking the Lord today and yesterday to supply our temporal wants, having no means to pay our weekly rent. And this evening, as late as 11 o'clock, a brother gave us 19 shillings 6 times, a proof that the Lord is not limited to time. January 14th, this morning we had nothing but dry bread with our tea, only the second time since we have been living in simple faith upon Jesus for temporal supplies. We have more than 40 pounds of ready money in the house for 2 bills, which will not be payable for several weeks, but we do not consider this money to be ours, and would rather suffer great provision, God helping us, than take of it. I thank the Lord who gives me grace to be more faithful in these matters than I used to be formerly, when I would have taken of it and said that by the time the money was actually due I should be able to replace it. We were looking to our Father, and he has not suffered us to be disappointed. For when now we have but 3 dimes left, and only a small piece of bread, we received 2 shillings and 5 shillings, the particulars concerning which would take up too much space to relate. Illness, February 18th. This afternoon I broke a blood vessel in my stomach and lost a considerable quantity of blood. I was very happy immediately afterwards. February 19th. This morning, Lord's Day, 2 brethren called on me to ask what arrangements there should be made today for the 4 villages, where some of the brethren were in the habit of preaching, as on account of my not being able to preach, one of the brethren would need to stay at home and take my place. I asked them kindly to come again in about 1 hour, when I would give them an answer. After they had gone, the Lord gave me faith to rise. I dressed myself and determined to go to the chapel. I was unable to do so, though so weak, when I went, that walking the short distance to the chapel was an excursion to me. I was enabled to preach this morning with a loud and strong a voice as usual, and for the usual length of time. After the morning meeting, a medical friend called on me and entreated me not to preach again in the afternoon, as it might greatly injure me. I told him that I should indeed consider it great presumption to do so, had the Lord not given me faith. I preached again in the afternoon, and this medical friend called again and said the same concerning the evening meeting. Nevertheless, having faith, I preached again in the evening. After each meeting, I became stronger, which was a plain proof that the hand of God was in the matter. February 23rd. I am now as well as I was before I broke the blood vessel. In relating the particulars of the circumstances, I would earnestly warn everyone who may read this not to imitate me in such a thing, if he has no faith. But, if he has, it will, as a good coin, most assuredly be honored by God. I could not say that, if such a thing should happen again, I would act in the same way. For when I have been not nearly so weak as when I had broken the blood vessel, having no faith, I did not preach. Yet, if it were to please the Lord to give me faith, I might be able to do the same, though even still weaker than at the time just spoken of. Healing in answer to prayer, the gift of faith, and the grace of faith. About this time I repeatedly prayed with sick believers till they were restored. Unconditionally I asked the Lord for the blessing of the bodily health, a thing which I could not do now, and almost always had the petition granted. In some instances, however, the prayer was not answered. In the same way, while in London, November 1829, in answer to my prayers, I was immediately restored from a bodily infirmity under which I had been laboring for a long time, and which has never returned since. The way in which I now account for these facts is as follows. It pleased the Lord, I think, to give me in such cases something like the gift, not grace, of faith, so that unconditionally I could ask and look for an answer. The difference between the gift and the grace of faith seems to be this. According to the gift of faith, I am able to do a thing, or believe that a thing will come to pass. The not doing of it, or the not believing of which, would be a sin. According to the grace of faith, I am able to do a thing or believe that a thing will come to pass, respecting which I have the word of God as the ground to rest upon, and therefore the not doing it or the not believing it would be sin. For instance, the gift of faith would be needed to believe that a sick person should be restored again, though there is no human probability, for there is no promise to that effect. The grace of faith is needed to believe that the Lord will give me the necessity of life, if I first seek the kingdom of God and His righteousness, for there is a promise to that effect. Matthew 6:33. March 18th. These 2 days have not been able to purchase meat. The sister in whose house we lodge gave us today part of her dinner. We are still looking to the Lord for deliverance. We want money to pay the weekly rent and to buy provisions. March 19th. Our landlady sent again of her meat for our dinner. We have but a halfpenny left. I felt myself very cold in asking for money. Still, I hope for deliverance, though I do not see whence money is to come. We were not able to buy bread today as usual. March 20th. This has been, again, a day of very great mercies. In the morning we met round our breakfast, which the Lord had provided for us, though we had not a single penny left. The last halfpenny was spent for milk. We were then still looking to Jesus for fresh supplies. We both had no doubt that the Lord would interfere. I felt at a trial that I had but little earnestness in asking the Lord, and had this not been the case, perhaps we might have had our wants sooner supplied. We have about £7 in the house, but considering it no longer our own, the Lord kept us from taking of it, with the view of replacing when we had taken, as formerly I might have done. The meat, which was sent yesterday for our dinner, was enough also for today. Thus the Lord had provided another meal. 2 sisters called upon us about noon, who gave us 2 pounds of sugar, 1 pound of coffee, and 2 cakes of chocolate. Whilst they were with us, a poor sister came and brought 1 shilling from herself, and 2 shillings 6 dimes from another poor sister. Our landlady also sent us again of her dinner, and also a loaf. Our bread would scarcely have been enough for tea, had the Lord not thus graciously provided. In the afternoon, the same sister who brought the money brought us also from another sister 1 pound of butter and 2 shillings, and from another sister 5 shillings. Thus the Lord graciously has again answered our feeble and cold breathings. Lord, strengthen our faith. Feels that His work in Tennemouth is done. March 29th. I went to Sheldon this morning. Brother Craig has left for Bristol for 4 weeks. I think he will only return to take leave, and that the Lord will give him work there. What a remarkable presentiment which came to pass concerning my beloved brother and fellow laborers. April 8th. I have felt much this day that Tennemouth is no longer my place, and that I shall leave it. I would desire that in August in the preceding year, 1831, I began greatly to feel as if my work in Tennemouth were done, and that I should go somewhere else. April 12th. Still feel the impression that Tennemouth is no longer my place. April 13th. Found a letter from Brother Craig from Bristol. On my return from Torquay, where I had been to preach, he invites me to go and help him. It appears to me from what he writes that such places as Bristol more suit my gifts. O Lord, teach me. I have felt this day more than ever that I shall soon leave Tennemouth. I fear, however, there is much connected with it which savours of the flesh, and that makes me fearful. It seems to me as if I should shortly go to Bristol, if the Lord permits. April 14th. Wrote a letter to Brother Craig, in which I said I would go, if I clearly saw it to be the Lord's will. Have felt again very much today, yea, far more than ever, that I shall soon leave Tennemouth. At last I was pressed in spirit to determine that tomorrow I would tell the brother and so, in order that by the results of this I might see more of the Lord's mind, and that at all events I might have their prayers to be directed in this matter by the Lord. April 15th, Lord's Day. This evening I preached again once more, as fully as time would permit, on the Lord's second coming. After having done so, I told the brethren what effect this doctrine had had upon me on first receiving it, even to determine me to leave London and to preach throughout the kingdom, but that the Lord had kept me chiefly at Tennemouth for these 2 years and 3 months, and that it seemed to me now that the time was near that I should leave them. I reminded them of what I told them when they requested me to take the oversight of them, that I could make no certain engagement, but stay only as long with them as I should see it to be the Lord's will to do so. there was much weeping afterwards, but I am now again in peace. This would not have been the case had the matter not been of God. I knew of no place to go to. My mind was much directed to Torquay, to preach there for a month or so and then go further. For though I had written that I would go to Bristol, I meant only to stay there a few days and to preach a few times. April 16th. This morning I am still in peace. I am glad to have spoken to the brethren, that they may be prepared in case the Lord should take me away. Having again but little money, and being able to leave town after several days, I asked the Lord for a fresh supply, and within about 4 hours afterwards, He sent me from 6 different quarters, £3, 7 shillings, 6 dimes. I left today for Dartmouth, where I preached in the evening. There was much weeping today among the saints at Tenerife. This is already a trial to me, and it will be still more so should I actually leave. April 18th. I am still at Dartmouth. I wrote my brother Craig that, the Lord willing, I should be with him at Bristol on the 21st. I preached again this evening with special assistance before a large congregation. Visit to Bristol. April 20th. I left this morning for Bristol. I preached with little power, as to my own feeling, in Exeter, from 3 till 4:30. At 5, I left for Tailford, where I preached in the evening, likewise with little power. I was very tired in the body, and had therefore little prayer. But still, and in both places, the believers seemed refreshed. I went to bed at 11, very, very tired. April 21st. This morning I rose a little before 5 and attended a prayer meeting from 5:15 to 6:15. I spoke for some time at the meeting. Afterwards, I prayed and read again with some believers, and likewise expounded the Scriptures. The Bristol coach took me up about 10. I was very faithless on the journey. I did not speak a single word for Christ, and was therefore wretched in my soul. This had shown me again my weakness, though the Lord had been so gracious to me yesterday in this particular, and had given me much encouragement, in that He made my fellow travelers either thankfully to receive the word, or constrained them quietly to listen to the testimony. Yet I did not confess Him today, nor did I give away a single tract, though I had my pockets full on purpose. O wretched man that I am. April 22nd. This morning I preached at Gideon Chapel, Bristol. Though this sermon gave rise to false reports, yet the Lord was pleased to bless it to several. And the false reports were likewise instrumental in bringing many individuals into the sound of the word. In the afternoon I preached at the Pit Hay Chapel. This sermon was a blessing to many, many souls, and many were brought through it to come afterwards to hear Brother Craig and me. Among others, it was the means of converting a young man who was a notorious drunk, and who was just again on his way to the public house, when an acquaintance of his met him and asked him to go with him to hear a foreigner preach. He did so, and from that moment he was so completely altered that he never again went to the public house, and was so happy in the Lord afterwards that he often neglected his supper from eagerness to read the Scriptures, as his wife told me. He died about 5 months afterwards. This evening I was much instructed in hearing Brother Craig preach. I am now fully persuaded that Bristol is the place where the Lord will have me to labor. April 23rd. This evening I preached again with much assistance at Gideon. I was very happy. The Lord made this testimony a blessing to several. I feel that Bristol is my place for a while. The Lord mercifully teach me. April 27th. It seems to Brother Craig and myself the Lord's will that we should go home next week, in order that in quietness, without being influenced by what we see here, we may more inquire into the Lord's will concerning us. It especially appears to us much more likely that we should come to a right conclusion among the brothers and sisters in Devonshire, whose tears we shall have to witness, and whose entreaties to stay with them we shall have to hear, than here in Bristol, where we see only those who wish us to stay. Some ask me to stay with them while Brother Craig goes home, but it seems better that we should go both. I observed here, it was evident that many preferred my beloved brother's gifts to my own. Yet as he would not come unless I came with him, and as I knew that I also had been called by the Lord for the ministry of the Word, I knew that I also should find my work in Bristol, and that though it might be a different one, yet I should fill up in some measure his lack, while he supplied my deficiencies, and that thus we might both be a benefit to the church and to the unconverted in Bristol. The result has evidently confirmed this. I am moreover by the grace of God strengthened to rejoice in my fellow laborer's honor than of envying him, having in some measure been enabled to enter into the meaning of that word. A man can receive nothing except it be given him from above. April 30th, it was most affecting to take leave of the dear children of God, dozens pressing us to return soon, many with tears in their eyes. The blessing which the Lord has given to our ministers seems to be very great. We both see it fully, the Lord's will to come here, though we do not see under what circumstances. A brother has promised to take the chapel for us, and to be answerable for the payment of the rent, so that thus we should have 2 large chapels. I saw again 2 instances today in which my preaching has been blessed. Decided to move to Bristol. May 1st, Brother Craig and I left this morning for Devonshire, May 2nd. I preached this evening at Bishop Stanton and told the brethren that the Lord willing I should soon leave them. May 3rd, I saw several of the brethren today, and again, so fully assured that it is the Lord's will that I should go to Bristol, that I told them so. This evening, I had a meeting with the 3 deacons, when I told them plainly about it, asking them if they see anything wrong in me concerning this matter, to tell me of it. They had nothing to say against it. Yea, though much wishing me to stay, they were convinced themselves that my going is of God. May 15th, just when I was in prayer concerning Bristol, I was sent for to go to Brother Craig. 2 letters had arrived from Bristol. The brethren assembling at Gideon, accepting our offer to come under the circumstances we had made. An example, for the present to consider us only as ministering among them, but not in any fixed pastoral relationship, so that we may preach as we consider it to be according to the mind of God, without reference to any rules among them, that the pew rent should be done away with, and that we should go on, respecting the supply of our temporal wants as in Devonshire. We intend, the Lord willing, to leave in about a week, though there is nothing settled respecting Bethsaida Chapel. May 16th, I preached for the last time at Bishop Stanton and took leave of the brethren. May 17th, I went to Exmouth and after preaching took leave of the brethren. May 21st, I began today to take leave of the brethren at Tennemouth, call on each of them. In the evening, I went over to Charlton to take leave of the brethren, of whom Brother Craig has had the oversight. It has been a very trying day, much weeping on the part of the saints. Were I not so fully persuaded that it is the will of God we should go to Bristol, I should have been hardly able to bear the parting. May 23rd, my beloved wife, Mr. Groves, my father-in-law, and I left this morning for Exeter. Dear Brother Craig intends to follow us tomorrow. The following record will now show to the believing reader how far what I have said concerning my persuasion that it was the will of God that we should go to Bristol has been proven by the facts. End of chapter 3, part 3, end of chapter 3.